welcome to another episode of Notes and Notables with your host, Trenton Petrie. Let's get ready to dive into another day's worth of educational topics. So come on in, take a seat, school is in session.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
To the first episode of Notes and Notables. My name is Trenton Petrie and I'm the host. I am here with our very first guest of our very first episode, Miss Kelly Scott. She is the Dyslexia Intervention Specialist. How's it going, Miss Scott?
It's going good. I'm so excited that I get to be your groundbreaking interview.
Great. Can you just tell us real quick about your background in education and your job title and what it is that you do at our school?
Okay. So when you ask for that background, do you want like the whole, like, cause, in education, you get to trade hats a lot, like as often as you want. And so you kind of find your niche. Do you want every hat I've ever put on, or like, what do you want?
Let's just start. So I know that you were like an ELA teacher. So let's just start like where you went to college.
Okay.
What you major in, things like that. And, kind of like, what led you to where you're currently are.
Okay. All right. So that's a nice long story. So I've always been obsessed with literature. I've always been creative writing. It's just always been a passion of mine. And I've always been a reader, like just avid. You would always find me with a book in my hand, never jumping on the trampoline, was laying on it with a blanket and a book. So when I went into college, I did community college. I gobbled up every literature course I could take. And in fact, I obsessively took this one professor's. I think she was so sick of me by the time I finally left. Well, then, you know, your time at junior college ends and I ended up getting into UT.
Hook 'em horns.
Yes. And I began as a literature major. And the further I got into it, I was like, I don't know what to do with this. Like, I don't know where I'm going to go with this.
I can see that.
And so I was like, where is my passion with this? And it was stories. And I'm like, okay, well, I love children's stories. And so I was like, maybe that's something to pursue. And I ended up heading into early education, and that kind of started everything. So while I was out at UT, this is like a long story, we had different teaching cohorts you could get into. Well, I got put into the reading specialization one, which everyone said it's the hardest one. It went really into the nitty gritty of phonemic awareness, the science behind reading instruction, what the brain does, what the actual steps are, and like what to look for. So I did that. Got out, started teaching elementary in Pasadena, and one of my interns was a reading recovery teacher. She was a past reading recovery, which is the strongest intervention you can give to kids. And once I watched her teach, I was obsessed. I was like, I want to do that. Okay, fast forward a couple years, went to Deer Park, was still in first grade, and was offered the chance to become reading recovery. So I took that training, just absolutely became obsessed with it. Did that for a couple years, and then I decided I think I maybe want to go closer to home. So I went to Clear Creek. While I was there, they kind of saw my background because Deer Park was so good about training us and everything. Right. While I was there, they were like, do you want to be instructional coach for the campus? And I said, sure. And so I did that for a year, decided I missed the classroom, went back to Deer Park. So now I'm back in first grade. Okay, did 1 year there. Then they asked me to go to second grade. And that's when we started departmentalizing at the elementary level. So I only taught reading, writing, social studies. Okay. And so again, I got to hone in my skill, and I was constantly starting PLCs on campus where I was like, hey, let's dig into shared reading. Let's see how we can become professionals on this. That all happened. And again, I decided to make a change, but it looks like we're going to get to that later. I taught 7th grade English for a couple years at the junior high level, and again was offered the instructional coaching position, or I applied for it. Ended up doing that, and did that half day with teaching, and this opportunity opened up to go into dyslexia intervention, which was honestly my passion because it went back to that reading recovery type science. And this is where I am. That was probably way longer than you meant it to be. I'm sorry.
It's totally cool.
You can totally cut it down.
That's right. All right. Well,
Full backstory.
that's right. Full backstory. That's what we want. That's what I want. That way, people know I'm just not picking random people to do these conversations with. It's people who are experts in their field. So
Well, and I'm 18 years in, so and it sounds like I wore a lot of hats, but I just kept digging deeper.
Right.
And that's kind of what kept opening different doors. And I was always the type of teacher that was like, I can't just barely do this. I need to know the philosophy behind it. I need to know the study. What does the research say? And what's the best way to do it?
right.
Because I wanted to hit those marks and I wanted my kids to. So
All right. Well, as we get going here, we'll be getting into a bunch of topics and questions with Mrs. Scott, and so stay tuned. Okay, so now we're going to get into like your teaching philosophy. Can you describe that teaching philosophy and how it aligns with the needs of our middle school students that we have here?
So, you know how when you first start teaching or when you're in college your senior year and they're like, write your teaching philosophy. Mm-hmm. I'm pretty sure I Googled it because I didn't know.
But
I didn't know yet.
Now they have ChatGPT.
And now we have ChatGPT, so we don't have to think for ourselves ever again. So I never really had one because it felt like writing a SMART goal.
Right.
And I always kind of hated SMART goals too because I'm like, my goal is that these students know they're cared for. So they have a person wherever they go that they know one time this person cared about me. They know someone cares about what they're teaching. Mm-hmm. And honestly, it's just there for them, no matter where they're at. For me, that's kind of the philosophy. I'm here for you. I don't care how much you don't care because I care enough for the both of us. And I'm going to push you whether you like it or not.
Yeah, understandable. So I know you talked a little bit about this, about your love for literature and whatnot, but what motivated you to become like a middle school teacher specifically, or was it just like the timing of events in your life?
Yeah, it was the timing of events. I'm over here making a face because I'm like, this is not a glorious story. This is not a glamorous story at all. This was oh gosh, I'm done. So at some point, sometimes people reach this place in their life where they don't even like getting up to go to work because they're just not fulfilled by it anymore.
Right. Mm-hmm.
This is going to sound like a terrible thing. Once I had my son, I was mom all day long because I was mom to my students, and then I would get home. And I mean, not just some students, to 25 students. I was mom, nurse, teacher, counselor, whatever they needed. And then I would get home and I had this other very needy individual, and it just didn't suit my personality. And so I kept just like kind of getting grumpier and grumpier. And finally I realized I don't think I'm in the right place anymore. So I went to my principal at the time. I love and adore her, and I trust her so wholeheartedly that when she said this, I was like, no, but I'll do it because you said it. So I went to her and I said, I think I'm done. And she goes, you are. She goes, you are at this level. She goes, you've worn every hat you have to wear.
This was
here.
in what grade?
This is when I went back to Parkwood and I was a K through 2 teacher.
Okay, so elementary age kids.
So yes, I was still in the elementary
in the
age.
younger elementary
and
age.
the little kids.
Yeah.
So yeah, which was honestly one of my favorite campuses of all time. It was so magical because the kids were so young. Anyways, I just, I always knew I'm not going to be a teacher that burns out and sticks it out. I'm going to find where I belong. So I went to my principal, had this conversation, and she goes, well, what do you want to do? And I said, oh, high school. Like, I love high school literature. I love studying it in college. I want to go back. And she goes, no, you're a junior high teacher. And I was like, no, Nobody likes junior high kids, not even their parents. I'm not going there. Like, I hated junior high personally. I never want to set foot back. And she's like, just give it a chance. And I was like, all right. So, you know, the door opened up and I got the interview with Mr. Wegman, and here I am. And honestly, I will admit, I did cry the first 2 months. It was a very big transition.
I bet.
Until I broke through to just the right kids, and I realized I was in the right place. So that's how I found my place here.
Yeah, that's kind of, I have a similar story, or not really a story, but similar path. Everybody who knew me coming out of college was like, Trenton wants to teach high school. He doesn't want to teach junior high, you know. And I did. My first job was at high school, but then the band director here retired, and it was a chance to come home to be kind of closer to to Kristen's family, my wife, and to be in the school district that I went through. And so and that was only in my second year. So in my second year of teaching ever, I took over this program here at Bonnet, and man, I love it. Like, I mean, the first year I knew just enough to stay ahead of the beginners, like a couple of days, you know. But man, I that first year was treading water. But then after that, it's gotten a lot better. And now I'm like, I tell all of the student teachers we have and the young college kids, like, you have to do middle school band at least for a couple of years, so you really learn how to teach the music instruments. Because when you go to high school, you might say, hey, flutes, I need you to play this shorter. But in middle school, you have to tell them how to play it shorter. You can't just say, play it shorter. You got to tell them how. And so being a teaching beginner band, it forces you to really know the intricacies of teaching all of those different instruments.
Yeah.
Yeah. So can you name a teacher or teachers that have had maybe an impact on you growing up that led you to your teaching profession, or even like how you teach? Like, did you have a teacher that was like, man, I really want to teach like them?
Oh my gosh, yes. So growing up, I would say the teachers that kind of jumped out the most were in elementary. There was Mr. Cradle. I didn't have Mr. Cradle, but everyone wanted Mr. Cradle because he was the guy that you could sit around his room to read. He was the guy that he let you turn your chair over and you could sit in it backwards. Like, it's such a big deal. In 5th grade, it was Mr. Liao. Mr. Liao was, and I mean, that's kind of shocking because it's males in an elementary.
Right.
And so Mr. Liao was all about like he would do whole group, but then he was all about almost like station type work.
Okay.
And it was just so different for, I guess, the 90s that it was just awesome because it's like, I don't just have to sit at my desk. I'm working, I'm collaborating. It was really a jump into that. And I don't know what education looked like at that time because I was 10.
Right.
But the fact that that type of collaboration and activity was happening was amazing.
So looking back on that experience, do you think that kids nowadays, say middle school kids, because that's who we deal with, work better in a more of a rotation type where they have to get up and move? Or do you think that having them in like stationary, like wherever the teacher puts them, that's where you're going to be? Like, what do you think as far as like placing kids in the classroom has to do with like their learning ability?
I think it's huge and needs to be considered at all times. And I think it's different depending on the classroom and the activity in the classroom. So I think that all kids, whether they're kindergarten to seniors, thrive on structure. I think knowing exactly what's coming, knowing the expectations, you get better performance. And so that's huge. However, you need to build in the time to break up monotony.
Right.
There's a
Yes,
time
yes.
when class becomes monotonous, and it's like, okay, we got to shake things up.
And you kind of have to know your kids. And
Mm-hmm.
when you start looking at the class as a whole and going, all right, I see a lot more glazed faces than,
Yes.
than I normally see, or more sleepy faces and
Mm-hmm.
body language. And so and I think that takes time in the profession to know. You don't just come out of college knowing how to read middle school's body language.
No, or
you-
any.
Yeah, right. And so, I mean, and as you get older and you get more experience in the classroom, you tend to know your class's body language, and you go, all right, now I think tomorrow would be a great idea to do like a rotation type assignment or something, or go out in the hall and do a what do y'all call them?
Scoots,
Yeah,
carousel,
Yeah.
gallery walks.
gallery walks. That's the word I
Yeah.
was looking for. Yeah, and that would kind of get them moving, get the blood pumping a little bit. So cool, good.
I try to always have at least one get up and move activity in my classroom because they sit too much.
Yes.
There's a lot of very traditional teachers, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I've been to a 6-hour training where I've had to sit all day, and I'm not in a good mood. I'm very, like, it's just not a positive experience. Like, we have to shake things up for them.
I don't really know if the human body was made to sit for like
Extremely, yeah.
that amount of hours per day.
And then to ask children to do that, adolescents no less, with an insane amount of energy, even
Right.
though people may not believe they do. They do.
Yeah.
I mean, in coming back to teachers that just meant a lot to me, in high school, there was a biology teacher. I can't remember her last name, but she was also my swim coach growing up, so I'm going to call her Coach Barbie. Coach Barbie was a biology teacher, and same thing. Very relaxed, very clear expectation classroom. Used to let her snakes out. They'd just slither around on the floor. Everything was fine.
Wait, like real snakes?
Yeah.
Like during biology?
Yeah. And they were fine.
Oh,
No, there were some that were like total. I'm okay with snakes.
I'm not a snake person.
Oh, I didn't mind. But, this was the class where we did like all the dissecting and all, like, so it was constantly collaborative, and she broke it up. So there was some lecture, there was some collaboration, there was lab. It was everything. And I just, that's another teacher that stood out to me. And the final one is the college one that I obsessed and just glorified I devoured every course she would teach. Sadly, she ended up passing away the last year I was there. But just the way she would talk about history and literature, and it was in a way I'd never heard any teacher talk about stories. And so she was kind of the one that was painting the way of, I want to continue down this path of storytelling.
Okay.
So she kind of was that one. And then finally, just to talk about some current people in the field, there's a teacher I've noticed that I've gotten to watch the last couple of years who just blows me away. Their tone, their timing, their management, their vocabulary explanation, their making it, like, they do everything. They've checked every box off. And I just adore that teacher. And the second one is actually she's still teaching, but she's a librarian, and she's a professor at UHCL. And I had the privilege of partner teaching with this person. And again, their tone, the way they spoke, it just, and the way they broke it down in such a meaningful way was so amazing to get to see. And I just always knew, break it down. Don't ever assume. Always break it down. Pick everybody up with it. So
Okay.
it was good stuff.
All right. When we come back, we're going to be diving into teaching in the classroom, and classroom management. Stay tuned. Okay, we're back, and now we're going to dive into actually teaching in the classroom and some classroom management. So, Ms. Scott, can you, how do you implement differentiated instruction to meet the diverse learning needs of our middle school students?
In terms of like instructional diversity, I a really big thing for me was getting the right text in the kids' hands. And that involved getting to know the kid and getting to know what they may actually read. So that was a really big one for me. But the other thing that I always gained the most, the most ground with is conferencing. Anytime my kids were reading silently, I was out there talking to them. I was coaching to them. What did you just read about? Talk to me about this. Da da da. Then when it came to independent work, I'm out there. And when you do that, you get to know your kids at such a point that you're not trying to get them from level 7 to 100 in a day. You know the stepping points, and because of my background, I do know the foundation of, all the way down to first grade of what these junior high kids should be doing. And so I'm able to take them one step at a time to get them to that grade level expectation. But that all came from just talking to them, getting to know them as readers and writers, and myself knowing the reading and writing processes, ins and outs, and what it should look like.
Okay. Are there specific tools or platforms? Because I know we're a one-to-one school district here in Deer Park, and so all of our kids have iPads. Are there specific tools or platforms or apps you find particularly effective for your students when it comes to technology or when it comes to the instruction that you are teaching?
Our number one was always Canvas. Canvas is a nice, openly housed place that kids can access assignments. I did a lot of video embedding, especially during the 2020 time. Lots of videos that showed kids how to do it. So it would be me lecture, me show, and then me trying to help them out. Even when they came back, because we had that period where it was some were remote and some were in person. So you didn't have a choice. You had to do both. And so Canvas was really nice for that. Notability, it's a nice e-binder type situation. The only problem is that sometimes if it got wiped, everything was gone. It didn't always back up to the cloud. And I hate to admit this because we are a one-to-one district, but there came a point where we honestly would go back to the old school paper pencil because it was easier to manage. And honestly, a lot of kids preferred it.
I mean, yeah, because then kids will forget their iPad. They won't be charged, or it'll be frozen, or have to reset it, or it's not updated. You can't really unfreeze or update paper and pencil.
Well, and a lot of them would complain that they were tired of looking at it all day.
Yeah, I could see eye strain.
Absolutely. And so, I wear a pair of glasses, and everybody's always like, I didn't know you wear glasses. And I'm like, oh, they're blue light. And it's on my days where I am looking at the computer a lot because I go home with a horrible headache on those days. So we went back to paper pencil, and the kids preferred it.
When it comes to assessment and feedback, how do you assess your students' progress throughout the school year from, when you first meet them? Can you talk a little bit about what you do at the very beginning of the year to kind of assess where they are, and then what you do throughout the school year to kind of reassess where they are at different points throughout the year?
Okay, well, we definitely had kind of pre-assessments because we always want to know what can you do? And we never wanted to over-test, but we wanted to know where are the kids. We would dig into their data from the year before. Unfortunately, it's one piece of data, and we can't take that as a solidity. And so we would try and give them pre-assessments to find out what they are. That way we could skip over what they did know, reach further to what they need to know. But again, a lot of it came from those pre-assessments, looking at past data, but then the research comes from the conference, and it comes from the in-class observations. Just in that one conversation, I've learned eons more about this student than I would have of just having him in a class because I've had a one-on-one conversation with him, and he's not allowed to hide.
Right.
And so once I found that out, and I would keep a clear record of notes of my kids, and they were always like, can we read what you wrote about us? Because they would see it in Notability. And I say, absolutely. And some of them didn't like what they read. And I was like, you didn't like, it was behavior stuff. And I was like, you didn't like it, but was it true? And they said, yeah. And I'm like, okay.
Right. Yeah.
So, I mean, yeah, but that constant checking in with them on their writing and even just looking at their writing told me everything about it. And that conference, I can't even tell teachers how powerful it is. Like, get out there and talk to your kids while they're working and take notes about it, but also know the process yourself in your field.
Right. So you would probably, you would, it's kind of safe to say that you think that probably if that could be a top 3 thing that every like new teacher coming into the profession should do is get out there and like don't sit behind your desk after you.
That's right.
After you've like, here's the assignment, kids, and then I'm going to sit behind and like if you need questions, come to me.
Yeah.
No, you go to them.
That's right.
Go to them because they're
they
not.
Won't come to you.
They're so like, no, I'm not gonna be that kid that goes and talks to the teacher and like I need help or whatever. But if you go up to them and like kneel down and go, hey, is everything okay? They may be like, well, I need, can you help me with this? Oh, okay, cool. And then you can help them. And then of course, because you never know if 5 people have the same question, well, then maybe we just need to re-go over that as a class.
Well, and that's another thing that, I've been afforded so many opportunities because of the district and our training. And one of them was how to give proper conferences. So we learned the one-on-one conference. Well, a one-on-one conference, once you're at a table and you hear 4 other kids say, I don't know how to do that either. Well, you've just turned a conference into a small group, and you need to know when to do that. You need to know like how to model it, but you need to know when to come into a student's work time and when to walk out of it. Like, don't walk away when they're still guessing. Make sure they've got their feet on the ground, then walk away and come back and check. But I would highly recommend, can I name a person behind conferencing that people could dig into?
Go ahead.
Gosh, if I can remember his name. He came to Creek when I was there. It's I almost want to say Ralph Fletcher, but I think it's somebody else. So that may not be the right Ralph or even Fletcher. But I'll have to give you that name so you can post it later or something. But dig into some books about conferencing because it can absolutely change your classroom and your teaching game. That's huge.
All right. So the other big thing that teachers have to face is classroom management. How do you approach the classroom management to create a positive and inclusive learning environment?
That takes a lot of work and a lot of practice. I definitely had to trial and error my classroom. And I think that's true of all classrooms because you're going to have a different chemistry because of the blends of personalities.
Right.
Something that I have stuck to and it stayed tried and true are the love and logic rules. I will treat you with respect so you know how to treat me. Feel free to do anything that doesn't cause a problem for anybody. If you do happen to cause a problem, I'll ask you to fix it. If you choose not to fix it or refuse to, I will do something about the problem. And then the final rule is, if you feel something is unfair, please come and talk to me about it privately.
Okay.
And so that has shown kids this is an equal balance. No one holds more power than others.
Right.
And they know I will not disrespect them unless they disrespect me. And still, if I were to disrespect them, it's in a respectful manner that calls them out. And so I've always tried to do that. The other thing is, and that's rehearsed, honestly, for like the first 9 weeks. And the other big thing is I do not allow toxic behavior, and I let them know the purpose of that classroom, and it is to grow and learn. And I make sure daily, this is what we're doing. This is what it's going to look like in education. This is what it looks like in real life. So they know. But having the expectations, placing the love and logic rules, and then I don't allow toxic behavior. If you're going to come in and disrupt other people, we're going to have a problem because you're not allowed to steal someone's opportunity.
to learn. Yeah.
Yes. And so and the kids knew that was one of my biggest pet peeves. And that is something that you will get kicked out of my room for. And it rarely happened because it's not that big a fight.
Right.
The kids knew I don't engage in power struggles. If they want to fight, cool. There's the door. Go take it up with the office. I'll be here when you get back. So again, it never happened because I wouldn't engage.
Right.
And so they'd know, why are you fighting with her? She won't fight back.
Yeah.
So that always worked out really well. And they weren't allowed to talk negatively about themselves or to each other. That absolutely
Yeah,
not.
that's a big one that I see
I'm like,
every
nope.
once in a while, especially when the kid before they when they start to feel each other out as far as like, you know, they're at a junior high for the first time and they don't really know each other, and so if somebody, you know, like in our world, if somebody messes up a note or whatever, they turn around, they say something, and it's
yeah,
like,
you're sarcastic.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's like what are we doing? We're on the same team here. You know, we have the same goal, we have the same, you know, thought process here that we're trying to do, whether it's in math, ELA, band, whatever. But yeah, just like kids trying to put other kids down. You know, and it's just I don't really allow that, and don't really understand why would a student want to put down another student. That's beyond me. But again, that was never my personality growing up. You know.
I mean, I do it with my friends. In fact, students have seen me do it, and I'm like, and they're like, well, you do it. And I'm like, you're right, I do. But it's with my adult friends. You're not involved in it. And we don't like tear each other down in a way that we refer to names and stuff. And so, I don't know, we've had really good conversations, but I would say that those are the big staples that keep a classroom becoming a safe, healthy environment. Because I've had multiple students come back and tell me, you made our classroom feel like a family.
And you do a lot of this, a lot of these strategies for classroom management starting on day one.
Oh, extremely. So it starts day one. And so day one, the relationship starts.
Right.
Okay. It's rocky at first. You have to get to know them. You can't roll your eyes yet at the ridiculous things they say. But you also have to set very clear boundaries at the beginning with the way they talk to you, and just, oh, no, you can't talk to me that way. Or, oh, you can't talk to them that way in here. That's how you can talk to each other at lunch or the hallway. But I don't, there's too much toxicity in this world and I can't have it in here.
Right.
So that's a big thing. But, I think what makes everything work is your relationship. If you don't have a relationship, nothing is happening there.
Yeah,
there's no growth. There's like the kid doesn't care because you don't care about them. So relationship, and the other one is you can't give up, because that one kid is going to push you so hard to get you to give up. And when they see you don't, and that every day they get a new chance, you won. You won. And so are they, because now they have someone in their court. They have someone they know that cares, and they're willing to try now. I have a student that it took till now to win him over, to have that relationship with him. And he honestly tells me, at my other schools, they didn't care. They didn't try. They gave up. I was so surprised when I got here and saw how much y'all care about me.
Yeah, I mean that's a big thing, relationships, because if, like you said, I mean, if the kids know that you care about them, they're going to care about what you have to say.
That's right.
And they're going to care about what you want them to do, and that also, the better relationship you have with them, the more you can push them, and you know.
That's
like,
right.
No, I know how good you
Yep.
can be. You're good. That's not good enough for me, and it shouldn't be good enough for you. Let's try a little harder. I know you can do it, and it allows them to go, man, I can't. They're not giving me an inch, because
Nope.
but they expect so much out of me.
That's right.
You know, I tell my kids, you know, I want them to have so much success that they don't even know what to do with it. You know, that they just have just success coming out of their pores, you know, with whatever it is. In my case, you know, music and band, but just in general, like, I want you to have so much success that you just don't know what to do with it. And that comes from establishing those relationships and asking about their life. not just like
That's right.
in your subject, but like, hey, what do you like to do? Oh, because I like, especially with like sixth graders around here, they'll wear during the fall, they'll wear their football jerseys, like their Deer Park Tigers or whatever, and you can start asking like, what position do you play? Yeah, or the Seminoles, like what position do you play or whatever, and what do you like to do outside of school? How is your family doing? All that kind of stuff, and that I think plays huge dividends when you start asking about things outside of your class and even school. Then they start, man, this person really cares about me, not just because I'm in their class, but I guess because they're a good human. I mean, they want to know about my likes and dislikes outside of school instead of just what I'm doing in school. And I've gone to my students, I've gone to classes when they're not doing very well to just like sit in on with them, or look
I have too.
And it's just
and they
like,
act very different when you're in the room.
exactly. They're like, especially when you get there before they do.
Teacher tells you, and they're like, they were not the same kid today, and it's like, because they
get
know.
There, you get there before they get there. Then when they walk in that door, you're already sitting by their desk, and they're like, and you're like, yep, you done messed up, and come have a seat, let's go.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's the best day ever in that class.
Well, and coming back to the relationship and getting to know them, that's a two-way streak. They want to get to know you too. And honestly, the more they do get to know you and see what a human you are, they do love you more. I think one of the biggest things that was always the hook, line, and sinker when I taught ELA is the personal narrative. I always wrote about the hardest thing that I had ever been through. And as soon as I brought that topic up and they heard my story, they immediately were like, it's time for me to open up and face this. And that's where I feel like other core subjects are kind of at a disadvantage because they don't get to hear the open up side of them that the ELA teachers hear unless you take the time to stop and have that relationship. And it's so hard when you have a huge curriculum to teach.
Yeah.
So I mean, I get the struggle.
Okay. All right. So getting into the end of this here, can you like, as an ELA teacher, can you just tell us real quick, what is a couple of books that you've read as of late that you really, really like?
Okay, well, I've reread Harry Potter, the whole series, twice. And I know that doesn't sound like a lot, but it's a lot. And then the other one is Full Tilt. That's by Neil Shusterman. He's a little new on the young adult author, but Full Tilt is not even his most popular one. I would say his more popular ones are the Unwind series or the Scythe series. But Full Tilt is kind of a mind-boggler. I recommend that. And then kind of more of my favorite artists or authors. So I'd say Mindy McGinnis. She writes very dark and twisted. Love. And then Riley Sager, also a lot of thriller twist type books.
Okay, and then lastly, because it's just, to end the podcast, a fun question. What is the top 5 movies you have ever watched?
I hate that question, and I don't know how to answer that. So instead, I wrote down some of my favorite, director-creators.
Okay.
Because I can't give you, the top few, because there's so many. And you go through, phases where you're like, I'm going to watch this every night for a month, and then I'm not going to watch it for 2 years. So favorite directors and writers, M. Night Shyamalan.
Okay.
Obsessed. Yep. Again, with the twist. I like things with twists. Yeah. And his are always so philosophical. They tie back to such a human nature. Hayao Miyazaki is a anime artist out of Japan. He is like the Walt Disney of Japan. In fact, Disney picked up a lot of his stuff and had it redone and Americanized with American actors. So him, love his animated stuff. And then I'm really obsessed with Dune right now.
With what?
Dune.
Oh, okay.
The movie Dune.
Oh, yeah.
So never saw the original, but the new one I rewatched probably, it's like my fall asleep movie. And just getting into but all that. Rebel Moon, Star Wars, all of it. They all have this deep, storytelling. And
right.
Anything like that, I'm in it.
Cool.
So, yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, Miss Scott, for coming on the podcast and being the very first guest of the new podcast, Notes and Notables. And And thank you for your time. And I hope you have a good weekend because it is Friday.
Yes.
All right, people. Join us next time. We'll see you. Bye-bye.
This has been another episode of Notes and Notables with your host, Trenton Petrie. Join us next time as we dive into another set of educational topics with a brand new guest. But until then, school's out.